Good afternoon to you. For those of you who do not know me, my name is Silke Kaiser, and I've been conducting truth verification examinations using voice stress testing for about 17 years. In short, I do voice polygraph tests. My job has led me to some very interesting cases, some very hair-raising cases, some hardened criminals, and left me with a lot of stories. In 2017, I wrote my first book. I've written 3. I wrote my first book called Gotcha. I know that the camera inverts the cover. I don't know how to uninvert it. My book did exceedingly well, actually, and farmers took a particular interest in my book because they learned a lot of how to prevent farm attacks. Unfortunately, farm attacks continue to be a scourge in South Africa, and our government is doing very, very little to stop this murder. It's a murder spree. That's the only way I can explain it. Anyway, one of my friends recently read Gotcha, and she said to me, it is so pertinent even 5 years after its publication, because all of South Africans, all of us, we are at risk of becoming victims of crime, even criminals themselves. So I decided to upload my book onto YouTube, and the only way that I can do it is to read it out to you. So I will be on a very regular basis, be reading out a part of the chapters and uploading for your enjoyment, and maybe you will learn something, and maybe it will even prevent you becoming a victim of crime one day. My book starts off with how I began, which talks about how I got into the career of voice polygraphing. Everything in my book is the absolute truth. I wrote it exactly as it happened. There are many chapters in this book. The only thing I would have changed are the names of people, the names of places, provinces, and maybe genders. So without any further ado, let me get straight into it. How it began. It was the morning of one of those glorious summer African days when the swimming pools beckon and an air conditioning unit, or at the very least a fan, was mandatory. The cheerful blue sky above me did not reflect my mood. I had, quite frankly, at the age of 39, lost my way in life. I had worked at a roofing company for 16 years and left that safe and secure, yet utterly unfulfilling employment for a brighter future about 3 months previously. I remained unemployed, frozen by indecision as to what I should be doing with my life. I had been helping my friend Nikki in her stationery store to pass the time. She and I met at the entrance to her shop at 8 every morning. The shop opened at 9 and the shelves had to be packed with boxes of pens, brown and white self-stick A4 envelopes, and the most in-demand item at that time of year, since it was November, diaries. Customers flocked to her shop because she had them privately printed, and each page had a motto typed at the bottom, words that were guaranteed to motivate change and bring everlasting happiness. I sat on a small plastic chair to pack the diaries on a low shelf and randomly opened to a page. With a new day comes new strengths and new thoughts, I read. A knock at the door stopped me from reading a second quote. It was Gladys, the shop's only employee. It was her 3rd year in this particular job. I yelled to Nikki that I was going to let her in and opened the door for her. I greeted her and complimented her on her attire. Gladys regularly wore traditional African clothing with a matching headdress. I went to the shop not only to help my friend and pass the time, as I have mentioned, but to also alleviate my boredom and the anxiety I felt about my future. Plus, I really did enjoy seeing what Gladys wore each day. What I did not know was that on this particular day was that a chain of events was about to unfold that would change the path of my life forever. After this day, I would finally find my life's passion. Looking back, I know that my angels were all around me to help me make it happen. I would need those angels many times in the years to come as I faced real danger and hardened criminals, as I soared very high in what was to become my new profession. Since it was only 8:30 a.m., I locked the door behind Gladys and decided to make us all coffee. In my never-ending quest to control my weight, I often stashed sweeteners in my handbag. For my American friends, you call a handbag a purse. In South Africa, we call it a handbag. We call a purse something in which we put our money and our cards into. After taking out the sweeteners, I placed my handbag next to Nikki's on the shelf behind the desk in the office. I spent about 5 minutes in the kitchen making the coffee and carried the steaming mugs out on a tray for all three of us. As I placed the tray on Nikki's table, I called to Gladys and Nikki that the coffee was ready. Gladys came into the office and said it was too hot a day for coffee. This was most unusual because Gladys always had a cup when she started her work day. Nikki came over and joined me and sat in her director's chair, the name I jokingly called it, and I sat myself down in the visitor's chair opposite her. I commented to her how unusual it was that Gladys was not having any coffee and mentioned that I found it almost rude. Nikki shrugged her shoulders, and I did not push the issue, as I was mindful of the fact that this was the pre-Christmas rush for Nikki and she had a lot of orders to get out. After our brief coffee break, I took the cups and tray back to the kitchen, poured Gladys's coffee down the sink and washed the cups. I left them to air dry and went back to help Nikki. We packed the shelves in readiness for the day and also for walking customers, and packed the stationery orders we had received as well. Nikki's husband, Adrian, arrived at about 11 a.m. and loaded the orders into the company truck, ignoring Nikki's playful comments about him putting his back into his work before he drove off to do the deliveries. Having nothing left to do, I left the shop at about 11:30, picking up my handbag, and stopped off at an engine garage to buy a packet of knickknacks and a lottery ticket. In America, you call it a gas station. Here we call it a garage. As I took my purse out, something was immediately amiss. My purse was open. This was strange, as it was my habit to close the press stud of my purse. I always anticipated that satisfactory click when I did so. I also knew that I had put 150 Rand in notes inside my purse on the previous night, and now they were no longer there. Since lottery tickets can only be paid in cash, I went back to my car and scratched around for coins. Luckily, I found enough to purchase a ticket. After I had paid for my purchases, I sat in my car, trying to figure it all out. Looking back on it now, I can clearly remember the way in which my brow furrowed as I backtracked my movements in my mind, trying to see when and how I could have spent that 150 Rand. My boyfriend had given me the money on the night before because he had initially borrowed it from me. I was so convinced that my memory was correct that I called him and asked him if I had put the money into my purse. He was adamant that I had done so. I explained to him that the money was now missing, and he and I mentally walked through my movements from when he had handed me the money the night before. We both remember clearly that we had been standing in the kitchen as I was cooking his favorite dish, chicken vindaloo. He had taken out his wallet and handed me the 150. Since I was busy stirring the food, I asked him to hand me my purse that was in my handbag, which was on the couch. Once he had handed the purse to me, I placed the money inside, remarking on how nice it felt to have some cash on me. Neither of us could remember clearly if I had closed my purse, but we agreed that he had placed the purse back into my handbag. We had not touched my handbag again until I had picked it up when I had left to go to the shop this morning at about 7:30 a.m. My boyfriend had left for work at 7 a.m., as was his habit. I had a sickening feeling in the pit of my stomach as I realized that somebody had opened my handbag and then my purse and stolen money from me. I felt utterly violated, even though it was such a small amount of money. Immediately, my mind began racing through the list of suspects: my boyfriend, that wasn't even an option. We had been seeing each other for 5 years, and I knew he was completely incapable of any kind of theft. Nikki, I had known her since childhood. Of course, we would open each other's handbags without asking if we were looking for lip balm or something similar and then mention it afterwards. However, not once had either of us ever taken money from each other without asking first. The only other person that could be counted as a suspect was Gladys. Nobody else had the opportunity or access to my money. I felt guilty for even thinking it could be the well-dressed Gladys, with her lovely straight-toothed, shiny white smile, her small dainty hands, and the way she would click her tongue when she was surprised or annoyed. I wondered if she secretly hated me and if that was why she had stolen my money, if she had stolen my money at all. As I drove home, I replayed the scenario obsessively over in my head. Why did Gladys not drink the coffee? Was it because she could not look at me? Had I taken the money out of my purse and forgotten that I had done so? Was it possible that someone entered our home while my boyfriend and I were asleep and stolen the money? I was the earth guardian of 2 small dogs at that time, and they both slept inside, and they would have barked like crazy if someone came in, so that scenario made no sense. Then my musings led me to a sobering thought. Should I tell Nikki or not? If I did and I was wrong, then that would destroy Gladys's reputation and her livelihood. But if I didn't tell Nikki and I was right, then what if Gladys had been stealing much more from Nikki other than just my 150 Rand? I called my boyfriend back, and we decided that he and I would discuss whether to tell Nikki or not about the missing money when we both got home that night. When I entered my house, I searched for the money, but it was definitely not in the house. I even asked my 2 beloved dogs out loud if they had eaten the money. Maybe I had left it on the coffee table and they had chewed it. I dismissed that thought. My dogs were both elderly at the time and were past the chewing stage. Just then my cell phone rang. It was Nikki. You'll have to listen to part 2 to learn the remainder of the story. That's all for now.